Hi everyone, welcome to this International Week of the Deaf, which is in short IWD 2020. Hello, my name is James Ong, and I'm from the Association for the Deaf. Today, the deaf community have the deaf communities in all parts of the world are celebrating IWD with different activities to show their pride of being deaf. Their deaf identity, their community, their culture, their language. IWD 2020 in Singapore, the theme of this event is Sign Languages are for everyone. So the theme follows the International Sign Language Day. We have fixed the date on the 23rd of September. This year, IWD is a bit different than the ones before. Previously, it was a physical event, but this is the first time we are doing it online. We hope that with this digitalization, we can reach to more people so you can share the deaf community and the deaf message. During this IWD 2020, we have in the morning, we will publish videos at 10 a.m. and at night at 7 to 9 p.m. we have a live Facebook session. And I hope that all of you have already seen our morning videos. So the introducing yourself in SGSL, meeting the community interpreters, and also the story Little Red Hen. So those were the morning videos that were published on Facebook. And now, what will we do for this session? We have #Deaf at Work. So we'll meet different deaf people to show that deaf can work similarly and their kind of work. So first, our guest is Kimberly, correct? And she is involved in many competitions relating to bowling. So I would like to tell you that she has got her biggest achievement. So she has 4 gold awards and 1 bronze during the first Asian deaf bowling competition, which was held last year. So kudos to her. So Kimberly will be sharing about her experience later, how she found her deaf identity. So to talk about deaf identities, we have Phoebe, and she'll be discussing on a guided tour into the world of deaf identities. Phoebe is a researcher, and she has researched on deaf identities. So this session will have both of them sharing their sessions and sharing their experiences, and there will be a Q&A afterwards. So if you have any questions, do feel free to put it in your chat box, and we will definitely answer them later. I do hope you have questions. I do know you have some questions, but because of the time limit, we can't really answer them all, but we'll try our best. So now I have Phoebe. So maybe Phoebe would like to introduce herself. Hi, my name is Phoebe. So I will be presenting on deaf identities. So that's my research, language attitudes, and diversity. So I'm looking forward to your questions and your opinions. So now I will give the time to Phoebe for her to start her presentation. So if you are curious, feel free to jot down and type your questions in the chat box. And later, during the Q&A, we will have Phoebe to answer them all, okay? So do enjoy yourself. So Phoebe, please take it away. Okay, thank you. Hidayat, can you help with the slides? Okay. Okay, so today my presentation is a guided tour into the world of deaf identities. So do you see the picture at the top of a man signing this sign? So that is the international sign for deaf. You see the world, it's a picture of the world where it shows that the deaf community all around the world, it's not really, they are similar, but there are also differences. They have shared experiences of hearing loss, but they also have different experiences. They are born in different countries, they are different race, they might be of a different gender. So that does impact our experience of the deaf. So you have to keep that in mind. And every individual has a different experience. So I will start the presentation right now, okay? Okay, so before I start, I would like to mention about myself. I would like to introduce myself and my life. I was born in Singapore and I grew up oral. So all the way, I was an oral, I grew up oral. So my parents sent me to a mainstream school. So most of my life, I was in the mainstream school. After I'm done with my O-levels examination, I moved to Australia. So when I arrived there, I studied to become a teacher for the deaf. That was the first time I acquired Australian Sign Language, or what is called as Auslan. And it impacted my deaf identity. I realized who I was. I remember one time I took a deaf culture class. It was my first time that I saw the deaf culture and I didn't know what it meant. So because where I grew up, my belief was deaf was a disability, similar with blind, autism, person who is wheelchair bound, it's similar. So deaf culture, deaf identity, deaf language, it was something new to me. And at the time, I didn't know, I wasn't aware of my identity. I wasn't sure which I associated with. I had my internal struggles to fit with the different worlds, the hearing world and the deaf world. So I had my identity crisis. And later, when I learned Auslan, the deaf identity grew in me. Later, I decided in 2014, after teaching for a few years in Australia, I decided to apply to study in Gallaudet University and studying linguistics and international development for my master's. So I moved to America, and when I arrived, the view was different. So before, when I lived in Australia, I felt like I did have the deaf identity, but I felt like an outlier. I couldn't fully match or fit involved in the deaf community there. Something was missing, something was different. So maybe the culture was different. Maybe I grew up in an Asian culture and my experiences are different from the company over there. So when I moved to America, my view changed. In Gallaudet University, I met many international deaf students with different sign languages. We have Japanese Sign Language, Korean Sign Language. We have different communities. So I felt that I could associate with them better because the international view, it was fine for me. I realized that the deaf identity comprises of many layers. I am a woman, I'm Asian, I'm Christian, I'm a teacher. So as you can see, there are many factors that make this my identity. It makes me who I am. It's complicated. You can't really label deaf only. It's more than that. So it helps me understand my experience and why I had that internal struggle in Australia. Okay, so that is my story, and that's my identity and how I grew to have my deaf identity. And it changed again when I moved to America, where I found my global identity. Before I grew up as an oral, I identify myself as hearing impaired, but now I identify myself as deaf. I'm proud of that. So I don't hear myself hearing loss. I look at it as a deaf game, that the world celebrates diversity, and the world is better if it's like that, because sign language is for deaf people. It has deaf culture, deaf identity. And that is why we have to celebrate that. Okay, so I will show you this video. And the question is, what does deaf mean? Do we have different identities? So before, I remember I said I identify as hearing impaired. So I grew up by the sign language, and later I picked up sign language. Then I identified myself as a deaf person. There are also other identities like hard of hearing, deaf blind. There are many identities. So I'll allow you to watch this video, and you can see maybe you can identify with a person, an individual in the video, or maybe you don't identify yourself with anyone in the video. So I'll let you watch this now.
Deafness is a spectrum. It's not just one definition. Someone like myself who's late deafened.
I am deaf in one ear and hearing in the other. Some people view me as a deaf person, some view me as hearing, but it's not one or the other.
I was born deaf. My father is deaf in one ear, so it's hereditary.
I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. Three youngest.
I switch between deaf and disabled because I'm also a little person.
Being deaf is a big part of who I am, but that's not my only identity. I'm a person of color, biracial, half black and half white, and gay.
This is the condition I have. It's called Usher syndrome. It's a hearing and vision loss.
I grew up oral.
A lot of people consider me hard of hearing.
People do call me hearing impaired, but I'm not. I'm deaf. People think being deaf is a bad thing, but I see it as a positive thing. The culture, language, and history make me who I am today.
The deafblind community, tactile ASL, the use of space, the culture, all became a part of it.
I'm learning little by little about protractor, and I can't wait to learn more. I am most comfortable with speaking English.
People with additional disabilities have to think about access and what they want. Do they know what they need?
Throughout educational years, I used note takers. I didn't have interpreters because I didn't know sign language. I didn't know ASL until I was 14.
I used cued speech and was mainstreamed throughout high school.
I went to a public school in the morning, then a deaf school in the afternoon. It was the best of both worlds. The instructors used ASL, which I found to be more inclusive.
I was in both deaf and hearing classes. I wore that bilateral hearing aid cinched across my chest. Very unpleasant.
I got a cochlear implant when I was 15 and went through intensive speech therapy. In high school, I would sit to the far right, since I could hear on my left side.
In large group discussions where there's dynamic conversation, I use interpreters.
In my own experience, captioning and interpreting together are the most effective.
I want more of a long-term designated interpreter. Someone who knows me well, who knows my work. As a Black person, I want my interpreter's voice to match me. My culture can't be overlooked.
People automatically think deaf people are all the same, but that's not true. We have layers upon layers.
When you meet us, have an open mind and open heart.
Okay, so I hope you've watched the video and many different identities and they overlay over one another. So for myself, in Singapore, means that there are some commonalities between all of us here, but there are also some differences. For myself, I live in 3 different countries. I grew up in Singapore, I went to Australia, and I stayed in the US. So you might see that my sign language looks a bit different than your sign language because it is influenced by 3 sign languages: sign language, SGSL, ASL, and Auslan. So it influences my signing style. So you see, each person's signing style and sign language is different. Okay, so do look at this slide. I'll give you a few seconds to read the comic. So, do you see the waitress, the woman? She sympathizes the deaf person. She looks at deafness as a negative. He cannot hear and sympathizes him. She feels sorry for him. But the second view is the boy. His view is different. He thinks that sign language, he looks at deafness as a positive. He replied to the woman, "You do not know sign language? Oh, I'm sorry." So the boy views deafness as a positive. So you see that you can see the waitress looks at it as a disability. So maybe one person do not know sign language, they become the disabled person. So it depends on the context and how we communicate and where. So if a hearing person needs access and there are many deaf people, the situation is reversed. She is viewed as the disabled person in that situation. So please take a moment to read this slide. Okay, I want to explain the 2 different models that you see on this slide. The model of deafness. So one, we have the medical model, the medical view, or the deficit model. And what that means is that they view the term deaf as something bad. They think that sign language is bad, deaf is a disability. You must learn to speak and hear. And also you must fit with the hearing people. On the other hand, the cultural model looks at deaf as something, the view is different. It's something positive, that deaf is good. that sign language is good as well, that deaf has a culture, that I'm proud of my deaf identity and sign language, and I belong to the deaf community. We also have individuals, a category of people, like for myself. Remember I mentioned that I grew up oral. Later I learned and acquired sign language. So now I switch between communications. So when I meet deaf people, I sign. Then when I meet hearing people, I speak, which means I view deafness and sign language as something, I don't look at it as something negative. I'm proud of my deaf identity, but I can speak and hear too. I can interact with the hearing. I can code switch between the two modes of communication. So this is what we call bicultural and biliteral. So I can switch to both cultures. So I can write and speak and sign as well. So some people has not started learning sign language and are preparing to learn. So it is really a process, the journey to find the deaf identity. One thing I need to emphasize that is important, if you want to be a member of the deaf community, you must know how to use sign language. You can't say that I have deaf pride in the deaf identity, but you yourself do not know sign language. An oral deaf person can be involved in the deaf community only when the person learns sign language to communicate with the deaf community. If you only know 1 or 2 signs, that is not enough for you to gain membership. So you need to learn how to interact with the deaf community to be involved in the community. A person who is full oral and do not want to sign, they won't be able to be considered to be a member of the deaf community. So please look at this slide. Okay, so this is the sign for autism. That means that there's an internal attitude, an internal belief that deafness is bad, being deaf is bad. The other terminology, the concept is linguisticism, which means that I believe, or there's an internal belief that sign language is bad and oppresses that language. So autism and linguisticism are interrelated and is linked with language attitudes, or what you call as ideology. So this belief attitude that one language is superior than the other. So for example, spoken languages, like for example, English, is better than SGSL. And SGSL is the inferior language. So that is the attitude. So that is an important concept to remember. And these 2 words are also important for you to keep in mind. So if I believe that deafness is bad, being deaf is bad, and sign language is bad, so I grew up oral. That was what I believed when I grew up as an oral person. I felt that the sign language was bad. That was my internal belief. So that was internalized autism right there. So I believed back then that it was bad. Hearing people may also believe that sign language is bad. So that is also considered as autism too. So do you see the slides? So do you see the word same and different? and all the categories. So these are all the different identities, these identity categories on the slides. So one thing that we have in common here, who are watching me right now, is our national identity. All of us, I guess most of us are born in Singapore, right? So we have a shared identity right there as a Singaporean. So we are similar. But in Singapore, there is also varying types of identities too. For example, I lived in 3 different countries. My experience might be different from all of you. My language, my knowledge on 4 languages. You might think that you have deaf friends, maybe who are Indian. Maybe their experience are different too because of race, or maybe a foreigner. Maybe he was from India and he moved and he's a foreign worker. So the identity is different. There is something different. Born deaf and becomes them too. So born deaf, they learn sign language differently than someone who loses their hearing at a later age. So your friends, your family, there are similarities, but there are also differences. So as what I said, identity is made up of different layers. So I would like to introduce another concept called deaf sim. So I will explain this slide in the next. I will explain this in the next slide, which is this slide. So please read this slide. So deaf sim, what does that mean? So all deaf people in the world have hearing loss. And all of us have shared experiences, like the hearing people viewing us as inferior, disabled. They pity us, that deaf, we can't do a lot. The hearing world oppress and limits us, limits our access, limits our equality. And maybe it looks like a rejection for seeking an interpreter, or maybe there's no note taker, or there are no resources like phone video calls. So for example, in different areas, in your workplace, or in school, or maybe in your university, maybe you have conversations with your family and you miss out some information by the hearing family members. So your access is limited, and the hearing might not understand what you face. They might not understand your barriers. So that is what I'm trying to say, that deaf people, they experience the same oppression and barriers, but at the same time, there are differences too. What I mean is that there are variations. So take a moment to read this slide for a bit. So if you see universalism, deaf, there are a few commonalities. So when a deaf person meets another deaf person in another country, they will sign, they can have conversations with each other. It's simple. We can code switch. We have similar experiences, but we also have different experiences as well. So if we think that all around the world, the deaf people are similar, it's dangerous. And I will explain it in the next slide. So please take a moment to read the slide. Okay, so deaf same, we have power. Doesn't matter if you're from a different country, where you're born, or your background, or your race, or your skin color, or whether you're Malay, Chinese, or Indian. You can connect with the deaf identity. It's something that you share with each other. But it's dangerous to assume that we are all the same because we ignore diversity. So for example, racism. Maybe other people view a person who is a white deaf man differently from a black deaf person. The experiences may be different. Like in America, race is an important issue. In Singapore too, we have race. We have racism too, maybe. So recently in the news, there was a bit of discussion too. So the point is, we cannot ignore diversity. We need to keep in mind and be careful of this, and respect and recognize that other deaf people have different experiences. Maybe they have different family backgrounds, they have different sign languages. So for example, for myself, I grew up oral, and when I joined, when I went to Australia, I started slowly and I started to learn Auslan, and I felt like I couldn't fit with a deaf person because the deaf people say I wasn't deaf enough. So what does a deaf person really look like? So different deaf people have different experiences, and I might not have the similar experience with another person in Australia. So they have different language experience, learning experience as well. Because I learned sign language later in life, right? So maybe some of you can connect with me more because you have the similar experience with me. So look at this slide and look at the question. So the concept deaf seen, how can that open possibilities, more opportunities, like more positives? Maybe you can think about that. We can maybe discuss that more in Q&A later. Okay, now moving on. The next question. The concept deaf seen. How can deaf seen be problematic? Maybe you can take a few minutes to think about that too. So now a new concept that I would like to introduce to you is called global deafhood. Okay, there's the sign for it. A bit hard for you to really see me because of the angle of my camera. So that is how you sign deafhood. So first, I would like to explain the word deafhood and what it means. So deafhood itself, it means that individuals, they travel and in search for their deaf identity. So for example, I explained that I live in 3 different countries, and for many years, around 16 years, it took me 16 years to finally understand who I am until I am now. So the development or this journey is different between different individuals. So maybe some of you might be faster than me, or maybe my journey is faster than you. So it depends on the experience, your family, the language exposure, your interaction with the deaf community. Maybe your interaction with the deaf community is limited. So, or maybe when you travel to the different countries or you go to the WFD and meet different international people, it might be a catalyst to develop your deaf identity. So the word global, why is it global? I will explain it in the next slide. Global deafhood, it means that you're finding similarities or commonalities. Doesn't matter where in the world. So for example, the limited access, the oppression from the hearing, but also we respect diversity in the deaf community. If you respect diversity, it will limit oppression inside the deaf community itself. Because in the deaf community too, there is oppression between one another. So we have to respect and understand their perspectives and where they're coming from. Maybe they grew up oral and they're trying to learn sign language, and a deaf person from a deaf family maybe do not want to have cochlear implants. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We cannot say that my way is the right way or there's only one way. It's not set in stone. Okay, now look at this slide. You see the different circles? So it's related to identity categories as well. And as what I said, as previously I mentioned, there are many factors that builds an identity, and each individual person has their own identity and their own layers. So the word for this is called intersectionality, and that is the sign for that. And this is the sign for it because they are interweaved. Many identities are interweaved and intertwined together and built into one final identity. I would like to explain how it deals with oppression and discrimination in the next slide. So you see the different kinds of oppression and discrimination. So it's not, the list is not exhaustive, but these are some examples on the slide. So racism, the color of your skin, and many people know what it means. So I would like to explain another word that often pops up in the deaf community, which is colonialism. That means that, for example, a hearing person would say that the deaf can't do things or can't do this or can't do that. Hearing people makes the decision for the deaf. They must speak, they must use cochlear implants. You can't sign, and signing sign language is bad. And hearing people enforce that decisions, and these deaf people, this deaf community have to accept that. For myself, I believe when I was younger that being deaf is bad because I went to an oral school. I went to Conosian school, and it perpetuates that sign language is bad. So my mind was brainwashed. So the hearing brainwashes my mind back then. But when I was in university, I realized that sign language is great. It supports the deaf identity. They have grammar and structure too. So similar with English. So for example, English sentences, we have the subject, verb, object, right? So SVO, for example. So the boy went to the shop. So that's VO. So the boy go, which is verb, shopping. Sorry, that's object. But sign language too has its grammar and structure. In ASL, it does has an SVO word order too. But also, ASL do have other word orders like object, verb, OSV word order, or maybe SVOV word order, different word orders. So that's why sign language, the structure and grammar looks very different than spoken languages. But at the same time, we have one commonality, which is SVO, which is found in both ESL and English. I think it was very interesting and it changes my worldview. My language is really a language, and sign language is really equal to spoken languages. And I realized that my attitude before I believed that sign language was bad, right? That was my internal belief. Now my attitude has changed drastically. So your identity, your attitude can really change in time as you learn and as you find your deaf identity, and it can become positive. So if you see this slide, so far I've mentioned and talked about the different identities and the attitudes. Now I'd like to focus on the Singapore context. So you see these two pictures of different children of different races, the different genders, different identities. So that is related to language too, but how? So let's move on to the next slide. So do you see the picture? What languages do you see? So you see our board, the street, we have 4 official languages. We also do have influence Singlish, which is influenced by these languages too. So for example, our Singapore identity, how people know we are from Singapore, how people know we are Singaporean is by how we speak, how we sign, our accent, be it signing or voicing. That will show our Singapore identity or our deaf identity. So for example, in Thailand, who was born in Thailand, grew up learning Thai and Thai sign language, they have their own accent and it's different than a person who is born in Singapore. So we know how to distinguish the different people and the different accents. Spoken English too is spoken differently. So it sounds different, pronunciation is different. So sign accent also shows the difference in the different in the world. One community in Singapore, the deaf community also have diversity in accent. So maybe a Chinese person or Indian person may sign differently, but we have to research on that more. There is diversity present in our own community as well. So you see there are 2 happenings in Singapore previously in history. So one, in 1979, we have the Speak Mandarin campaign, which means that the government wants to encourage people to speak Mandarin. And this led to putting down the other dialects, such as Hokkien, Teochew. They are all being put down and seen as an inferior language. In 2000, the government advocated for the Speak Good English movement because they felt that Singlish was a bad English. So they wanted to promote a person to speak like a person from UK or maybe from America. So they want to follow the way that they speak. But really, Singlish itself, it is a result of the 4 languages, the language contact between the 4 languages. So maybe you might think that Singlish is bad English, and your view that Singlish and SGSL is similar. Do you believe that SGSL is broken English? I can't say whether that is right or wrong, but that is a language attitude, your internal belief about language. Maybe other people might believe that too. My belief that Singlish was bad English back then when I grew up, but now I really cherish Singlish. is a layer of my identity. And SGSL and English are equal languages because I learned linguistics, so I know it doesn't matter whether it's a spoken or sign language, all languages are equal. So please see this slide. So you see the newspaper, they publish terms like deaf, mute. And how does that make you feel when you see this word, deaf, mute? For myself, I'm offended. I get offended, I get angry because deaf, mute has a negative connotation. Deaf people, they're not mute. They're not dumb at all. So you see that the outside view the deaf community negatively. So that's why it's important that we advocate properly for positive and celebrate the deaf identity, the deaf culture, and our deaf language. So in 2016, I was involved in a linguistic research project that is relating to language identity. So I interviewed a few people and their identities and their views on SGSL SEE. So I would like to share what I found with you. Deaf people reported that some identities have big D, small d, some use hard of hearing, some use hearing impaired, some use deaf mute, some use PWHL, some uses non-signing hearing impaired. Now maybe there are more words or terminologies. Maybe the deaf community has discussed new concepts and new identity terms, new identities. Yeah. So maybe it's between the few words. So recently I've discussed with a deaf person, talked about the person cannot fit in both the worlds, the hearing and deaf world. So in Singapore context, maybe we can decide on that category. So after you have decided, maybe you can let me know. Deaf people also have the language debates. So for example, SEE versus SGSL. Some believe that SEE is good for teaching English, while SGSL should be used for daily conversations or interactions with friends, where we go out to eat in a restaurant, and so on and so forth. Some people believe that SGSL is a language in itself. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not sure, I can't say, because that is a language attitude. I was just curious to know and to think what are the views of the people here. Some people view the SEE as GSL or Pidgin Sign Language. That system is used to identify deaf people. So if people see a deaf person using SEE, maybe they view them as not being in the deaf community or do not have the deaf culture. So there are different SEEs as well. There's different SEE1, SEE2. In every country, there are different kinds of attitudes. There are different kinds of attitudes all around the world. So do look at this slide. Okay, so these are some of my findings and my observations. Different deaf people has debated on deaf identity and attitudes, which relates to SGSL. Some believe that Singlish is similar to SGSL. Maybe you also believe that too. that Singlish, some people might think that Singlish is different. But the point is, we need to analyze SGSL's grammar and structure first. So the question is, language identity, culture, how is it related? How is language and identity related and impacts and influence each other? I would also would like you to think and reflect your language attitudes. Maybe you believe that some languages are superior than others. For example, maybe you might believe that ASL is better than Asian Sign Languages or SGSL. Maybe that is your internal belief. Or maybe you believe that SGSL is better than English. You can believe that too. So I'm curious at your attitudes and how it impacts your identity. So now I've already explained the concepts, deaf same, diversity, how there are similarities and differences. Keep that in mind and do respect the differences. You cannot ignore the diversity. At the same time, you can share these experiences and feel more comfortable that someone can understand me because they understand why is it being like to be oppressed. So sign language attitudes and identity. How does it impact advocacy? So you work with people with different identities and different beliefs on sign language. Maybe that becomes a barrier to your advocacy efforts. Or maybe you share similar views. Some have positive and they can progress. Maybe you have to consider the bigger picture and how each part links with each other and it's not separate. So you have to remember that your opinion, there's no right or wrong. Don't be scared to question. You are not. Don't think that your questions are stupid. You're welcome to ask any questions. Okay. So now it's the question and answer segment.
Now, I believe there's some questions that we'd like to ask. Maybe let's look at the questions. Okay, so one of the questions is, earlier you mentioned about the deaf person to be considered as deaf. You must know sign language. So does it mean for a hard of hearing person who does not know sign language, do they need to learn first before they can be involved in the deaf community? That's a good question to ask. Okay, so firstly, for myself, my identity as a deaf person, identify as a deaf person, and at HOH, hard of hearing. Some examples, like maybe people outside, if they never met a deaf person before, when they look at me, they think, oh, why does she call herself deaf? Yeah. What concept or idea of deafness do they have? They think deaf person cannot talk and they cannot do attitude, cannot speak, cannot cannot hear a bit. Yeah, why would I call myself deaf? Because I can do a little bit of all those. And they don't know what's in the deaf community. So they would call me a hard of hearing person. A hard of hearing person can be involved in a deaf community. And you think that, oh, if you're a deaf person, you must learn how to sign, but that's not the case. So I grew up in oral, and all the time I refused to learn sign language. Okay, but what did that mean for me? I couldn't be involved in the deaf community using sign because they signed and I couldn't understand sign back then. So I had that language barrier. So how could I be involved when I didn't know the language? So they have that same language as well. If you don't know Chinese, and there's a group of, if you're Chinese and there's a group of Malay people speaking in Malay, and I don't know Malay language. So how would I be able to be involved in their conversation? And if I tried to involve myself, I would feel a little bit isolated because I didn't know the language. But if I knew the language and I picked up the language, Malay language, then I would be able to interact with them. So it's the same idea, no matter whether you identify yourself as a deaf, a hard of hearing person, as an oral person, an HI, yeah, it's the interest and the wanting to start to learn the language. And then you can become involved in the deaf community. And it doesn't matter your background, whether you come from a deaf family or you grew up oral. If you want to learn sign language and join the community, you can. There's no problem. You just have to try. So sign language provides equal access for all as well because it's visual. Some with cochlear implants can hear, but the equal access is not the same. So I hope this clears up the question. Okay, so there is another question. Okay, so this question asks, how does the medical practice of using cochlear implants to solve the hearing loss issue impact the learning of sign language? For example, if a person has been it's a cochlear implant. Sorry. Okay, so back to Phoebe. So having cochlear implants does impact a lot of things. There are a lot of misconceptions about it. Many hearing people, whether parents or deaf hearing parents, some deaf parents are also like that. They have a misconception and believe that cochlear implants, once they're on, they're a quick solution to become hearing. And that's not true because when you take out a cochlear implant, you're still deaf. Yeah, when you go to sleep, you still can't hear. And so with a cochlear implant, even though it's successful on some people, it won't be successful for all the people. Some still fail and don't find successes with the implants. Your hearing might get better, yes, but research does. If they have access to sign language from young, then there are benefits for language development as they grow older. So sign language also has an impact on spoken language. So for example, if a person with CI, maybe a child, benefits from using a CI and is not exposed to sign language, then it misses a critical period or window for language development. And later on decides to be exposed to sign language, then so there is an important time for children to develop their language cognitively and for language acquisition as well. Many language acquisition theories prove that there are benefits. It's not one is better than the other, but all make sense, and there needs to be an important balance. If deaf can learn speech and to speak, then why not? It's a gift. And sign language can also be beneficial. Both can be beneficial, hearing and spoken. And so for the experience for me has been very rich and something that I really cherish. Having grown up oral, I find myself, I'm also able to join the deaf community. And there's so much that I wish for myself to learn sign language when I was younger. And both have really added a lot of benefit to me. Deaf children, they'll thank you later if So cochlear implants can provide you opportunities if you benefit from it. Thank you. So let's go on to the next question. If I don't have enough, how can I find my own identity when there is not much exposure here? Okay, so when you look at it, they can have different groups interacting with each other. Example, when you're exposed to sign, you have enough interaction, then you're able to pick up the language. And it's not the same as writing or speaking a language. So if you're not using the language, then you forget the language easily. So for SGSL videos, when you watch them, you're able to pick up sign language. And if you want more deeper discussions using sign, then you can contact me. Then I'll be happy to talk with you more about my experiences, about deaf identity, and also give you more people who know sign language and connect you with them, advise you, and so don't be afraid to join the sign language community. If you find that a person doesn't accept you, then you need to find another group that you can interact better with, that's more open-minded to interact with, a group that you can click with. And I'll be happy to just give you some advice, and you can contact me later on. So next question, how can self-advocacy be established when deaf people have their issues with their self-identity as deaf? How shall this improve advocacy? It's linked with ability and confidence to advocate well. I think when we view other deaf people and their roles, for example, role models, when you look at them and what they do right or wrong, we know that nobody is perfect. Yeah, people make mistakes, but so for example, my experience in America and in Australia, there are deaf people with very strong identities. So when there are problems, for example, looking for an interpreter, so the group will work together to support each other and make things work and advocate for each other. So you need to find maybe 4 or 5 more people who can come together and support each other in terms of identity and attitudes. If 2 people disagree about language maybe, and it makes it hard to advocate sign language as well, then maybe you need to find a different way or different ways to build your deaf identity, your self-identity. Deaf person, your self-determination. You're a deaf person, you can make the decisions yourself, and you don't need the decisions of a hearing person to influence you. So when a hearing person tells you what to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you can say no. You must realize that you can make your decisions, and you are the person that is deaf and not the other person. And you have to take leadership and ownership. It's okay if the deaf people disagree or argue sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, you have to continue to stand up for yourself to solve the issues yourself. Deaf people will make the decisions for deaf people, and we have to respect it. And hearing people want to support the deaf community, those that want to support will respect the deaf community. So if you want to advocate successfully, that's important. So the next question is, how can the deaf community be more accommodating to the hard of hearing? I have come across some who refuse to accept hard of hearing as part of the deaf community, to allow the hard of hearing to learn sign language and mingle around with the deaf. The trend is that now there are more hard of hearing kids. So there are 2 ways.
So you can identify as a hard of hearing person, and that's fine. You can be proud of that identity. You can switch, but the point is, you yourself must want to learn sign language also. You must be involved in that community, and if other people view you as really wanting to learn and improve yourself and learn sign language, that a person really wants to improve, I will accept that person into the community. I know that some deaf, they're not able to see the different perspectives on and understand the other person's journey. I would tell, if you meet that person, that kind of people, move on. Find other people to interact with who will accept you for who you are. Okay? Because everyone is not the same. Some people will like you, some people won't like you. It's normal. It's the same for me too. Hard of hearing, for example, maybe you need to work harder also to find your journey, because I know for myself now, for 16 years, I had to find my identity, and it wasn't easy living in 3 countries. But I'm lucky, but at the same time, the journey is not easy. It was a roller coaster ride for me. I had a lot of struggles, I had a lot of problems. I had to find the solutions. I had to work with interpreters. I had to learn how to set boundaries. I had to find my identity, my deaf identity, and how we work with interpreters too. That's important. We have to find a strong identity. We do not know whether the interpreter will overstep their boundaries too. Because if you know you have a strong identity, you would know if the interpreter does a good job or not. So a good interpreter needs to understand their identity too as a hearing person, their hearing privilege. They have to analyze themselves and how to they can oppress the deaf too, unintentionally. So for HOH children, I think if the school one day you see there is a deaf mentor program, and there are different deaf people, different individuals supporting the deaf people to present and relating to topics like deaf identity, finding out their struggles, and doing that was one of my works before too. I mentored people when in Australia. So I went to their different homes and advised the parents, learning through games with the children and develop sign language along the way. So there's a lot of positives and benefits. So I worked as a teacher once before, and there were different role models. So there must be deaf role models to help these children when they are in their teenage years, to when they go through puberty, and maybe they need to have the right person to talk to. They need to have a role model to discuss their access to language. They need to interact without any limitations. In classroom, there's limitations because you need to communicate through an interpreter. But I think in Singapore, there's not a lot of role models in school. Similar with social worker, counselors as well. If you can have deaf people to be social worker, counselors, it will benefit the community. We need to get opportunities for deaf people. So study to become that can be a kind of opportunity to raise the deaf community and proceed as a community. James is saying that's really nice to hear. And hopefully that will happen in Singapore. So the next question is, if a hearing person lost his or her hearing, what does this person identify as? Okay, that's an amazing question. That's a good question. So deaf people will always deaf community for a long time. So for deaf people who loses their hearing at a later age, it will be different. They'll look at themselves as a hearing person. But if you lose your hearing and is late deafened, we have deaf hearing people like that too, and join the deaf community later. It is possible that they can identify as deaf too. So it's really whether you want to learn sign language and whether you are proud of that. And you can develop that deaf identity. Maybe their view will be different from other deaf people because you have experience growing up as a hearing person. So the worldview is different than a person who is born deaf and who is deaf at a young age. Personally, for myself, I'm open to all different kinds of identities. I can see that for other people, they can accept, but some people will not. So I cannot say that all will accept you because I'm not sure of the other people and how their mindset is like, or what are their worldviews. Okay, James is saying, I think we have no more questions. I think that's enough. Oh, I think there's one more question, sorry. Okay, someone asked do you think that hearing use sign language as do you think hearing people using sign language as an accessory to get famous on TikTok and such, and about suing them for misusing the language? Wow, that is a great question. That is a very important question. It happened before. It happens a lot of times in the community all around the world. So you see hearing people taking advantage, exploiting the language from the deaf. We are trying to sign something for fame. People look at them and they get fame. But that is wrong because sign language is from the deaf community. If there are no deaf people around, then sign language won't exist. So that language is from us. We cannot use that language and take that away, appropriate it and use it for yourself. So that kind of situation, I feel that if that is under cultural misappropriation. So yeah, as I said, cultural misappropriation. So who should film themselves? Deaf people themselves should use sign language because they started the language. They created the language. So deaf people should teach sign language too. So if you see this kind of things happening, a part of advocacy is to call them out and say what is right. You explain why it's wrong, and that is part of advocacy right there. Okay, so James is telling to wait for a bit more if there are any more questions. Okay, so there are no more questions. So thank you Phoebe for presenting and answering all these questions. I really had a wonderful time because the deaf community and the hearing community can learn from your experience too. So thank you so much for joining and taking a part in this. Thank you for inviting me. Okay, so now we have hashtag Deaf at Work. So do watch the video of Kimberly's interview. So we have Dunwei who is interviewing Kimberly. She is a staff. So if you have, after watching the videos and the subtitles, if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat box, okay? So now, please enjoy watching this video.
Hello everyone, my name is Kimberly and I'm playing violin.
Are you studying right now or?
Right now I'm just waiting to start university, which is next week.
Okay.
Right now I'm playing with the DSN team.
Okay. How long have you been a bowler?
I have played violin since I was 5. So I think about
5.
8 to 9 years.
So actually, how do you become a bowler?
So in primary school, I actually tried a range of different sports like netball, swimming, and even gymnastics. Then when I tried those sports, I realized that I cannot do them very well because of my disability. So when I tried swimming, I was able to do it well. And then from there, I was hit by sports school and then have been learning ever since.
So before you went to sports school, were you already very good in bowling?
I was,
But you're not okay.
no, because I just started my first competition in P6. Then I was fortunate enough to place in the top positions. Then that's why sports school became interested in me.
Singapore sports school, right? Was it difficult to get in?
Yes, it was quite difficult because I had to sit through 3 rounds of interviews to get in.
3 rounds of interview?
Yeah.
So can you share more information on what are the interviews?
So if I remember correctly, I was actually supposed to get back into New York where I competed at the various sports, but then I missed that. So sports, I think they actually approached me and said they were interested, but then they said I had to go to some interviews here. So in the first interview, I think was with I don't remember who, but I was interviewed by the academic and the sports side, and the last one was by the higher ups, like the sports.
So what made that decision for you to enter into Singapore sports school for that bowling part?
So besides bowling, I'm also interested in other sports. Generally, I just like playing sports, and I'm not sure why they chose me, but generally to be in sports, you have to have an interest and passion for the sport, and also be able to do well in the academics because in sports and studies can be very demanding in sports. And sports they also opt for our the things that them when you need to help you become a champion in the sport. So, yeah.
So that means you actually intended to become a sports person.
So actually, when I was 6, I didn't even think of sports. I actually wanted to go into other secondary schools like IWD because I thought that I can handle them. Yeah, so my parents actually encouraged me to try out for sports school because they saw how well structured the programs are, and that will allow me to enjoy good sports and studies to the fullest. And so that's why I decided to try out for sports school in Cochlear.
Very interesting because I think previously there had never been another hard of hearing or a person with hearing loss that entered the school. Never, right? I mean, you're like the first one, right? Because I mean, with a person with hearing loss, was the school able to provide the support?
Yeah, so definitely I face a lot of challenges in sports school. So the first challenge I would say in terms of sports, I would say that most of the players are actually performing better than me because we started earlier in P3 and some even in P2 or in P1. So yeah, I had to train harder to catch up with my peers. And then so Mandarin also has affects me in some ways. So like that gender in very genders, it can be very noisy. That's why like multiple for me to share instructions from the teachers. I don't up on me around this by asking my coach to write in a small notebook. So I understand what my coach's instructions meant and to prevent any miscommunication. And lastly, I learned from the Brazilian police expert. She said that my loss of hearing actually affected my sense of balance a little, and including balance is very important in making accurate shots. So let's say by initial shot and I use balance, I will actually change the bounce part a bit and make it less accurate. Yeah, so at the campus, like working hard on that course, like so and balance. Yeah.
You have already participated in some international competition?
So for outline sports usually I have been like for a lot of competitions locally and internationally. So in sports the international competitions I've participated were Thailand Open in Bangkok, the New Junior All Stars in KL, Malaysia, and most of the competitions were around the Southeast Asia. And then there was one big training trip that I was very happy to have qualified for. And so that training trip was actually a trip to one of the best training centers for bullying around the world, and that was in the US. Yeah, so I spent a week in the US practicing my training skills.
When you were training there in United States, how was it experience over there? Was it good? Well, fantastic.
Yeah, the experience was fantastic. They all had very cultures, very specialized equipment. So that for example, I had to try these special classes. Special classes, yeah, there's like a VR thing.
Wow, VR!
Yeah, so that allows you to visualize the line and then from it. Like on that one, I just kept sweating. So it was quite a fun experience.
See, that's very interesting. They use such a very high tech incorporate into their training system.
Yeah.
Well, that was bad. But still, I mean, I'm sure you know Americans have that accent. Were you able to understand them?
Yes, I was able to understand them just fine. So that some parts I couldn't understand, just ask them to repeat, and they were actually not okay.
So they know that you are a person with hearing loss, right? How was the reaction of it like? How was the reaction?
Practically treating me as like everyone else, but yeah, some are very proactive in making sure that I'm familiar with what's happening, and some are other than sports. Yes, it actually has provided me some opportunities to go for international competitions. So I so far went trained one season when I met the World Deafness Championship in Thailand. Yeah.
Was it a challenge for you?
Yes, it was quite a challenge, but it's international stage, like the highest stage that a player can go for. So it was like quite a scary but exciting experience for me. Yeah.
So much stress, so much pressure, and like you are meeting new people, having new experiences. Do you have any like support that you feel that help you throughout this whole time?
I was actually in for all these competitions were in sports school. I think the biggest support that sports gave me was the structure timetable in the system. So whenever I'm for competition, I will definitely miss a lot of classes. Yeah, so when I'm there, the tutors will actually help me set up slot for me to have a one-on-one consultation.
One-on-one consultation.
Yeah.
That's very personalized, very personalized.
Yeah. So I was able to catch up quickly and follow the class after that competition. Yeah. And then also on my part, I try to manage my time as well. So that before I go for competition, I'm trying to complete as much work as trở thành cái phần vợ được competition so more fun for behind. Yeah, and also in the competition, yeah, when I'm stressed, I just do the homework.
So it's like when you're stressed about the competition, never mind, I do my schoolwork. Then you're stressed about schoolwork, then you go to bowling.
Yeah.
That's like that lah.
Yeah.
So how about at home? Do you have support at home?
Yeah, of course. My family and my parents are also very supportive of me. So they will cheer me up when I feel down. And then my friends and friends, they will encourage me not to give up. Yeah, and keep going. Yeah. And then my parents also sometimes will see me around for learning, so I can practice more. Yeah.
So have you ever given up before? I mean, you said that your friends encourage you not to give up. So have you ever given up before?
Yeah, a lot of times I've had very close to giving up. Yeah, so one time was I think somewhere in 2016. I just feel that when I'm not doing as well as my peers, it has been 3 years already, and my peers all have more than individual titles than podium positions. Whereas for myself, I only have one team events. So yeah, and then at this point time, my coaches were actually to change my technique. And it was that I was so used to doing the same thing, but he wanted to do a completely different thing. So that really affected my scores and as well as my self-esteem. But then my parents told me to pushing on, and then eventually I met my so when that qualified for the trip to the US.
But now you are already using what the coaches told you to do. How you feel now? Is it better?
Very satisfied that I managed to get the hang of it. But of course, I feel that I still am using it sometimes.
You're starting school next week. How are you? Nervous? Good.
Yeah, but because I'm a bit worried today, like because of the COVID virus, I think I was very worried. Yeah.
So everybody will be wearing masks then?
Yeah.
Are you able to understand how?
Sometimes yes, sometimes not. Yeah. So I'm like maybe trying to ask them to make this share so I can yeah. So I'll see how it is.
So far, I have learned quite a lot about you as a bowler and how you get to where you are. So, what you're looking forward to in your next 4 years of your life in university. Do you plan to continue bowling in university as well?
Yeah, so over the next 4 years, I hope to be able to continue pursuing bowling and managing my studies at the same time. Yeah, so for bowling, I'll be training with the SA most of the time, and then maybe I'll train once a week with the MS now.
I'm curious, right? Do you know any sign language?
Sign language. Actually, left behind from my training, just learn from my deaf friends in the SA and some other reasons. Yeah, so my sign language.
Do you have intention to maybe learn more sign language? Do you want to learn?
So, yeah, so actually in the US, we have this sign language elective. So that actually some people are really learning sign language in the US.
You are planning to take up that elective?
Yes, that we hope to have a better foundation of my sign language. Yeah.
I mean, personally, I'm also a hard of hearing person. So I'm actually I grew up with speaking only. After I learned that language, Very easy to translate to sign language because it's visual and easier.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But I still remember all that songs. So many songs.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Everything
Who are happy bowling. You enter into Singapore Sports School and then you go for Deaf Sport Association. So, I mean, this is the path that you are very sure that you are continuing. So, what is it something that you want to tell the deaf community or anyone, any youth?
So when it comes to choosing a passion that you want to pursue, first you can think that life is very short. So you should not to try as many things as you want and then find something that you really like to do. So if you decide that this is the thing that you really like, you want to do, just go ahead and pursue it. Yeah, so maybe at the start maybe very difficult, very frustrating, just push it on until the end. Then you start to think, maybe must doing this after all. Yeah. So let's say you're not doing that thing, you can just simply try other things to do. Yeah. So like when try is not a lost cause if you cannot make it. It's just an experience for you to look back and move on from. For me, I always try to keep my own in my banking because like if I just do something half-heartedly, then the thing is not worth doing because like why I even put in the effort in the first place. Yeah.
So the means can I just say that you need the for the others firstly is don't do things half-heartedly. You want to do it, just do it all the way. Put in all the effort. Secondly is your life is short. Just try everything that you want to try. So these two things are the most important things for you.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you for this.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you for joining us today. You shared a very interesting story and you talked about your own experience. And now you are a great bowler, am I right? I think we have questions for you to answer. So give us a moment, then we can start questioning. Okay, let me see what questions shall I ask you. Okay, is there a difference when you join as a deaf competition or regular competition? What was the atmosphere like?
So yeah, there's actually pretty enough differences between a deaf competition and a regular competition, primarily because of the people whom I interact with. So usually in regular competitions, I usually interact with people of my age, and it's usually done through oral communication, which I find a bit difficult because bullying centers can be very noisy. Whereas for deaf competition, it is a whole different experience because I found that I can easily interact with all the competitors there through sign language, awareness of it or listening to it.
Okay, so we are waiting for the next question. Sometimes you feel like you want to give up. How do you know when to give up on something? And do you have a sport that you want to give up on? So maybe you want to change and move to bowling.
That is a very interesting. So yeah, so at first I tried gymnastics, swimming, and netball. Although I enjoyed them, but I did not really want to pursue this sports because I found that I was not able to enjoy this sports as much as compared to bowling. So I decided to give up on this sport, so I can focus on pursuing bowling.
Okay. Let's wait for the next question to appear. You go to the different sports, different competitions. Would you say that you are at a professional level of bowling?
Actually, I don't quite see myself as a professional in bowling because when I compare myself to the national bowlers of the Singapore bowling team, our experience and bowling skills is vastly different. So I have a lot to learn along the way to catch up with them. And hopefully I will be able to reach their level in the future.
Thank you, Kimberly. We'll wait for the next question, okay? We'll wait for people to ask questions in the chat box. As a deaf bowler, do you think that use your position to advocate as a deaf sports person for the community?
Yes, definitely. I have been trying to use my position as a deaf sports person to advocate for the deaf community. So in the bowling scene in Singapore, I'm one of the few deaf bowlers. So often people more often come to ask me questions about what is it like being not able to hear. So I more often share with them. And there was one time in school I actually organized an event for my classmates at sports school to interact with some members of the deaf community in conjunction with a sign language platform Interior. Yeah. And currently I'm still trying to reach out to the mainstream public and continue to advocate for the deaf community.
So when you do reach the professional level of bowling, do you have plans to teach bowling as well?
So far, I've actually not considered teaching students to bowl. Yeah, so maybe that is something that I will consider later on. Maybe after I finish my university. Yeah.
Good. Maybe you can coach in the future. So now we are waiting for other questions to appear. Okay, we have a question. So when you join DSA, right? Have you met any deaf person before joining DSA? And if no, how do you feel when meeting them for the first time?
Before I joined DSA, I've not met any deaf person. So when I first joined them, it was like a huge culture shock to me because at that time when I first joined, I did not know sign language at all. Hence, it was initially difficult for me to communicate with my teammates in the DSA. However, over time, my teammates were all very patient with me. They slowly taught me how to use sign language. So until now, I'm able to communicate with them, and I'm also still learning.
I think it's good to have bonding with the deaf community. You can communicate with them easily and side with each other. Maybe you can tell me more about your experience, your technical skills in bowling. Is it challenging to learn in training? What are the challenges? Can you share with us your experience?
So, bowling is a very interesting sport because it requires an excellent coordination of all your body movements and as well as having the consistency to throw the ball at the right moment. So, for example, so in bowling, we normally have to work on the name of 5 steps before we throw the ball. This allows us to generate speed so the ball can have a more impact on the bowling pins. Yeah. So we are in the technical skills. Currently, I'm working on my timing. Yeah. when do I put down the phone, and as well as my release. Yeah, so as I'm the stream process, I tend to be very inconsistent because it's difficult to coordinate so many movements and keep making those exact same movement all the time.
Next question. So how does loss of hearing affect balance when bowling? This is even with wearing hearing aids. Will that affect you?
On the scientific side, I'm actually not too sure about how it affects our balance, but I think it has something to do with the equilibrium of the fluids in our ears. Yeah, so maybe with hearing loss, the fluids are not very well balanced, and that's why it makes it difficult for us to balance. And I actually only have a cochlear implant on my right ear. On my left ear, I don't have any hearing device at all. So everything's one-sided to me. So that's why maybe I find balancing just as difficult whether I put on my cochlear implant or take it off.
Okay, I think you're still waiting for the next question. Do you feel that it's more challenging? Do you find it more challenging than your peers to become a professional sports player because of your hearing loss? Do you think that you have to work harder as a deaf person?
Definitely. Yeah, so one main challenge that I can identify is my poor sense of balance as a result of my hearing loss. So having a poor sense of balance will affect the accuracy of my shots. So that's why my shots may not be as consistent as compared to my peers. So the last time I did a balance test where I had to close my eyes and balance on one leg. I immediately failed the test because I only lasted for 1 second, whereas my peers managed to last for about 30 seconds to 1 minute on average.
Okay, we are waiting for the next question to appear. We are trying to pick a question for you. For now, you're still learning sign language, right? So to help in communications, so maybe you can build a strong bond. And will you be looking forward to hang out with them, maybe for a quick meal?
definitely, I'm very excited to meet other deaf people in Singapore too, so I can make new friends and learn more about sign language. So every Sunday I will meet with my teammates from the SA to go and as well as check a little well-making for the other teammates to finish their shorts. Yeah. Besides the SA, I'm also looking forward to meeting Nadia from the 5S3 series. Yeah. So I look forward to many things.
So that was the last question for you. Yeah, sorry. So just now, I thought there were more questions, but yeah, that was the last question. So you can, thank you for joining us for this interview, for this Q&A. So you're the first person to come for this hashtag Deaf at Work. So to get to know better as a deaf sportswoman. So thank you for that. Thank you for this sharing session. So thank you. Thanks, Kimberly. Okay, so now we are done with the presentation and the interview. So a presentation from Phoebe where she shared her story and her travels from Singapore to Australia. Then she went to America. Wow, it really influenced her experience and impacted her life and experience. And it gave me an idea how to approach different challenges. I'm happy that Phoebe now has become a proud deaf person. For 16 years, that was a really long journey. So thank you, Phoebe, for sharing your experience. For Kimberly, as a bowler, it's not easy to keep on bowling and practice to become where she is now, nearing to a professional level. She has to. There are a lot of challenges that she faced, but she had managed to get 4 gold medals and 1 bronze medal. So for today, we are done with the program. I hope all of you learn a thing or two about the deaf community and hope that it has inspired you. But wait, tomorrow we have video uploads as well at 10 in the morning. Plus, we also have a segment at night, again at 7. And we hope to see you again tomorrow. Happy International Week of the Deaf, IWD. Bye.